Tonight, it's everything Longhorns. Grab a drink and join us on tonight's tailgate. Well, hey, thanks for joining us. It's Luke, and we're here with Gerald from the Longhorn Republic. So, Gerald, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me, fellas. Always love talking college football in the spring.
Oh,
Awesome,
yes.
yeah.
This is a fun time. One of the best times of the year, I think.
Oh, yeah. My favorite time.
Absolutely.
So before we kind of get into everything, tell us a little bit about your Texas, you from Texas? Did you grow up? Your parents just raised you right? What's the...
Yes and no.
Okay.
So my dad was in the Air Force. We moved around, but we ended up settling down in the San Antonio area.
Okay.
And then I ended up, looking at various schools and kind of University of Texas. I would never forget. I was watching the Red River game my senior year in high school, and Derek Johnson, if you remember him,
Ooh,
was the chief
linebacker,
for a
yeah.
while. He used to do this thing where he would grab a quarterback from behind and punch the ball out.
Yeah.
And the ball, it was, I think it was Rhett Bomar, and the ball went like 40 yards down the field.
Yeah.
I'd never seen anything like it. And I was like, that's where I'm going to school. That's how I made my decision.
That's
It turned
awesome.
out really well for me. So got a journalism degree from them, did that journalism thing for a while. Now I do other stuff and do the podcast on the side.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Very, very cool.
So normally how we do these interviews and whatnot, we're just going to ask you a couple different questions and stuff like that, and just kind of flow through it. And it's really just kind of giving an overview. If you want to get a little bit specific, feel free to do so. So
Love it.
But I think Dennis has got your first question.
Yeah, I guess how excited is Texas coming up for the upcoming season?
I think it is a cautious excitement, right? Going into the SEC is not something for the faint of heart.
Nope.
I think especially with Alabama and Georgia both on the schedule, it's like, but plus you have A&M and OU always. So like there's that kind of looming in the background. But I think when you compare like the home schedules from year to year, like there's a big upgrade and uptick as far as like fan value. There's a reason why they raised season ticket prices 2 years ago, right before they made the announcement, because they knew this was coming, right? But I think with the trajectory of the program, I think it's on the right trajectory, especially the football program. But athletics overall, people are really excited. People are bought in. I was in school the years when Texas got like the reputation of having like terrible fans and like not a home field advantage. Like people showed up like midway through the second quarter. They would leave midway through the third quarter. Like, what the hell are y'all doing? Like, why even come to the game, right?
Yeah.
So that's completely flipped in the last several years. It's really become a fan base that's super bought in and super invested. And so it's been cool to be a part of and watch. And like I got to take my son to his first game a couple of years ago, and that was a blast. And so like they have the stuff for the kids out front, and they've got all the food trucks and stuff. And it's just like fans are super excited.
No, man, that's
That's
cool,
awesome.
man. I've always been, for me, Texas has always been a kind of love-hate relationship. Or should I say the real UT, at least to
Shut
me.
up. No.
For me, it's always been love-hate. I've always been just a Pack guy myself. So when USC was playing Texas, so many years ago and they lost, I was a little heartbroken by that too. But my favorite player, Earl Campbell, also came from Texas. So I love that. Growing up at West, Texas was always the real UT to me. Michael's always been a little mad about that.
You can just stop that nonsense. We don't need to talk about that. I'm a Tennessee fan. So east of the Mississippi, we're the real UT. West of the Mississippi, y'all are the real UT. So
There's something to be said about like, and I'm going to get like hell for this, right? But like, there's the conversation of like, the University of Tennessee was established before Texas was officially a state. Like we were a country at that point when the University of Tennessee was established. But also like, there can be two, right? There can be two.
There's room and space.
As long as you're not calling us TU like those other weird kids out in
no,
college.
that's strange. No, and I actually was talking to somebody who went to whose husband actually was on who played for University of Tennessee back years ago, and she was like, "There's actually some legal representation from a trademark perspective that literally the Mississippi River does divide who is allowed to be called UT and who's not." And I was like,
I didn't know that.
I'm like, and that may not be true, but I've just heard that, and I was like, you know what? If that's true, that's actually hilarious. But you're correct. There's plenty of room for two UTs. And
as
eventually,
long as we all hate the same people. That's what college football's about.
that's true.
That's right.
And eventually we're gonna play. We're gonna play the same. We're gonna play on the field, and and it'll be the battle of the orange. We'll just see who wins at that point.
They can claim UT for that entire year.
That's a year.
I mean, you guys played us hard in basketball this past weekend, so I can't like you guys. I'm surprised that we won that game. We're a football team, football podcast, but basketball has been spicy.
I'm still hurting from that one a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
You guys played so well,
That flagrant foul call is still a little chewing and gnawing on the backside, but we'll leave that for another day.
Yeah, but again, it's not what we're here to talk about. So, but you guys have any any news in the coaching world or anything like that that's like big news or whatnot? I know Sarkisian's just awesome and he's marching on, but anything big going out of there?
Nothing crazy. The Bo Davis thing was a little unexpected this offseason. It makes sense, right? You get a raise, you get to go back home and you get to coach your son. Who's going to say no to that, right?
Yeah.
Like, I can't be upset about that. Jeff Choate getting a head coach job, like you're never mad about your assistants getting head coach jobs because then that lets you have that recruiting tool for coaches. Like,
exactly.
Hey, we'll get you in the big seat if you want it. So outside of that, it's been a really stable coaching staff. The wide receiver room has been a little weird as far as coaches go. They had Brennan Marion in there last year. He left to be an OC out at UNLV, and they got Chris Jackson in from Jacksonville, and he's been good. So there's, it's been a relatively stable coaching staff, which has been nice because, I've lived through the Charlie Strong and Tom Herman coaching churn, and it's, there's something to be said where folks are like, well, Texas doesn't develop folks. It's like, yeah, because guys are learning a new system every 2 freaking years. It's hard to develop when you're doing an install every other offseason, right? Like you can't really do that. So the consistency has been really good for them.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome.
It's always nice when you can keep your coaches and, not have and have that consistency, not have anybody leaving. But now in terms of leaving, you guys got a lot of guys in the draft or going to the draft.
Entire wide receivers.
Yeah, your whole wide receiver room's gone. What is it like? You got like a tight end. A bunch of your defensive guys have gone. You do get to keep both your quarterbacks. Yours is coming back, which I think that's awesome. I think that's going to help out your receivers. Everybody on your offense is going to be elevated because of that. But what's that looking like? What's kind of a 2-part question. Who are the guys that are going to fill those roles? And then who is like the one guy that you are looking forward to who you think is going to step up and make a huge impact, whether it be a transfer or somebody who's waiting in the wings?
Yeah, so I can answer that a couple of different ways. I think offensively, the answer is a little easier. Texas grabbed Isaiah Bond out of the portal to help with that. They've also got Matthew Golden from Houston who kind of step in to be a really good 1-2 combination there. So, and then that room. One of Brendan Marion's knock for a lot of ways was like developing receivers, but he was a hell of a recruiter, and so they've got a bevy of 5 stars and high 4 stars in the room. Jonte Cook's a kid that got some snaps last year. DeAndre Moore's a kid who's a burner who's probably going to get some play there as well. So I'm not too concerned about the wide receivers because you've got a veteran offensive line, you got a veteran quarterback. Wide receivers a spot that I'm not necessarily like talent can carry you quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Sure.
There. Defensively, that is the $1 million question. I mean, how do you replace the conference defensive player of the year, the conference defensive lineman of the year in the middle of that defense? Like there's no way to do it, right? They've got some talent that came in toward the tail end of the Tom Herman era. You've got Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins, who are both like high 4-star. I think actually Alfred was a 5-star. Now that I think about it, but they were both defensive ends that kind of converted to tackle, and so that's the same trajectory that both Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy had coming in. And so if they could make even half of the jump that those dudes did, then things might be okay, but that's asking a whole lot.
Sure.
So that's the thing that's really concerning to me. They didn't really do a ton to address that in the portal. I think it seems like they liked what they had. And I you know what, they turned this team from 5-7 to a college football playoff team in 3 years. So I will not doubt their instincts on that.
Sure. Yeah. It's like they know something, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they got
right.
You guys will have plenty of opportunities to really prove yourself on the field this next year. So
absolutely,
like tons. Like it's just I'm y'all's schedule. It's nuts.
Yeah.
I think Florida has you beat on like strength of schedule, but that's about it. And
they didn't do us a ton of. I think getting some of those at home.
Yeah,
this
that's
year
true.
Was helpful, but like you got Michigan non-conference, and then I think our SEC opener is at Mississippi State, right? It's at home against Mississippi State. Georgia, like our third game in the SEC. Like there's not a short on, not a long on ramp for sure.
And you have to play the SEC powerhouse of Vanderbilt right after Georgia too. So
that's
hey.
Hey, he's gonna have to play here in Nashville, man. Here in Nashville.
Right? Yeah, we live here in Nashville. I just want you to know those guys are scary.
Yeah,
you
they
guys,
are.
Just like, hold on to yourself.
The entire campus is just always in destruction.
Yeah.
They're destroying everything.
So we'll jump into, like, speaking of the schedule, looking through that schedule, what is your prediction? And you can be a homer here. You can be, a little more analytical. But what do you think is going to happen next year?
Yeah, and you got time, so take your time.
Yeah, take your time with it.
There's a reason why I don't bet, because I suck at this.
Hey, so do I.
Me too. Yeah.
Right? I lost.
You guys want to bet?
All my money. I lost all my money playing poker in the locker room my sophomore year of high school, and I haven't bet since.
You learned your lesson.
Right? So you learn your lesson, you go hungry for a week, and things go right. I'm going to go ahead and chalk Colorado State and UTSA up as wins, probably.
Okay.
Michigan's going to be reloading quite a bit everywhere. So, I mean, I the fan in me, right? The head, the heart thing, like it's hard to get them together, but I wouldn't be shocked if they came out of non-conference undefeated, like 3-0 coming into conference play.
Sure.
ULM, obviously the late add-on, because there's only 8 conference games this year. I'm gonna go and chalk that one up. So like 4-0 coming into September, coming into October is not gonna be unheard of.
Nope.
Getting Mississippi State at home is a big one. Like having to go on the road for your first SEC game would suck. So like Texas doesn't actually have to go on the road until Vandy, and that's like week 7 or 8.
Man.
It's not on the road. You're gonna have more fans there than Vandy.
Right. There's also road in the stadium. Probably.
Yeah. Right.
So really, like the 2 toughest environments they're going to play in are probably the Red River game in Dallas, because that's a 50-50 split.
Yep.
Going to Arkansas, like Arkansas might not be good, but those guys hate us, and I get it, and I respect it. Yeah. They're going to show out, and I think it's going to be a night game, so they're going to be drunk and mad, and I get it. And then ending the regular season at A&M, right? Even if they're not good, which who knows what's going on there. There's no hate like Aggie hate in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
They're weird, but they hate and they cheer, and that's what I think they do well. Like gun to my head, like 9-3, 10-2 feels like a safe bet. I haven't seen what Vegas has on the lines yet. Again, I'm not a bettor, but I always like to keep track of those things to see if my brain is working right, because those guys in the desert know something.
Yeah.
So like I would feel fine with a 9-3, 10-2 situation. I think there are fans that would probably be like, oh, they're going to go 12-0, and I think there's a path to that. I think Georgia's still going to be Georgia, right? So like I'll probably chalk that one up as like 11-1 feels like a safer, like if you're going to shoot for the moon, like don't chalk Georgia up as a win. But outside of that, like Oklahoma's going to be gettable. Vandy, obviously, Florida, who knows what the hell they're doing. Arkansas is going to be gettable. Kentucky, A&M, like it's not necessarily the toughest schedule the first year in the conference, at least as far as the conference slate goes.
Do you think it's a safe bet that Texas will make the playoffs at least?
With 12 teams, I hope so. Golly, I hope so. Because at this point, like you could probably be 10-2 or even a good 9-3, depending on how that third loss looks, and be right there in the chase for it. So I would be surprised with what they're bringing back, especially offensively. I think they'll probably have to lean on the offense quite a bit.
Yeah.
More so than they did a year ago, which I'm fine with. Right, that's what Sark does well. So overall, like I said, I think if they can hit that 10-2, 9-3 mark, they're in the conversation for sure.
Yeah, and Vegas has got you at 10.5.
Okay.
Yeah, so
I've never understood the half win, but
they give themselves some
money.
margin.
Right?
The other UTs used to that. You just played like the first 2 quarters, and then you just give up the second half.
Yeah,
A&M counted their spring game once. That's where the half.
Yeah, no, I totally actually Texas is one of the. They're obviously not as, you guys are not a sleeper team by any means, because you're coming into the SEC like fully loaded for the most part, from a staff perspective, and you've got a lot of weapons. And so like I personally think that Texas is primed, especially even though you definitely have a harder gauntlet in the SEC than some other teams like Bama or Tennessee, or Missouri, who has the easiest schedule. I really do think that you guys will probably, if you guys coach the way that I know you guys can, I honestly think you probably can beat Georgia pretty handily. Georgia's going to be down this year. Georgia's down is like everyone else is normal, but but I like that still means a lot. Like, and I really have a lot of confidence.
I mean, it's a road game for Georgia too. So
yeah.
Kirby Smart's the inheritor of my never bet against Nick Saban clause. Like I always said, if you always bet with Nick Saban, you probably won't go broke. And I think Kirby Smart is the next one. So like I just don't feel like, as long as Kirby Smart's walking up and down those sidelines, I'll probably play if I was a bettor, right? I don't bet, right?
I totally understand. Like as a UT fan that has dealt with Saban for years, I mean, I honestly, like, with Saban gone, I'm just like, you know what? I really feel like Bama's not really a surefire win, but pretty much a pretty good chance that we're going to win.
It's gettable.
It's definitely winnable, pretty much year in and year out at this point.
You almost got them a couple of times.
There have been a couple of times, yes. I mean, even last year, if we played the second half, as Dennis alluded to, then we would have won. But yeah, it's just one of those things. Like I totally get it. Like again, as a Tennessee fan, we've had to deal with Georgia also for the past, Kirby Smart's Georgia for the past 6 years, and it's a nightmare to deal with because he is relentless. But at the same time, I also really like Sarkisian. I think he's a phenomenal.
I mean, he has experience coaching against not just Smart, but just Georgia as well. Like as a whole.
Yeah. I just love what he's doing over there, and I think like Kirby Smart, he's building a phenomenal program, and I love the fact that throughout college football, we're seeing more and more of these coaches that are like, no, I want to stay and build something at this big program and like bring it back up into the relevance that it once was.
Yeah.
Because like for a long time it was like Texas, and I mean like Bama was. We were talking, I think, in the chat earlier. Like Bama used to be super relevant. Then they died for like 40 years, and then they came back because of Saban. And so it's just I'd love to see other programs take kind of that leap.
That happened over the course of the entire college football, as opposed to just one or two teams.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Now one
college. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It's like, I mean, college football is better when like, and this is like the homery of homers, like blue blood elite, like 1% take. But like, I've always felt like college football's at its best when like the blue bloods are good, right? Like, I hate the crap out of Notre Dame, but like, there's something about like Notre Dame being good and having a team to hate, right? There's something about Alabama and Georgia and Florida being good. There's something about Texas and Michigan, Ohio State being good, right? That's what like. As college football kind of changes and morphs and becomes this future thing, like that's kind of the root, right? The teams that you recognize. It sucks that USC isn't good. Like I love seeing USC good. Lincoln Riley aside, right? I love seeing those teams. I love seeing those teams.
I mean, USC lost the Grinch, so they might have something this year.
He's 0-2 on defensive coordinators because the guy before Grinch also sucked. So like, I'll believe it when I see it. Right? But yeah, like I would say, I think college football is better when the blue bloods are good. Yes. Like when the traditional teams are good, when you're humming the fight song all week because you know they're coming. Like that's part of like the fun.
That's right. And the only fight song you should ever hum is Rocky Top.
No.
I'm good.
So one other question I've got for you is in regards to your quarterbacks, and really Manning, because I feel like he, for whatever reason, has got some flack for a lot of his decisions. When Ewers stayed, it's like everybody questioned why he was staying at Texas and not going somewhere else. When he decided not to opt into Madden and said,
"Well, I'm a little disappointed by that. I'm so excited for NCAA 25. Like, I'm a kid. I'm like, yes, I can play this game."
That's great. And I mean, if I was in college football right now, I'm like, don't even give me the $600, just let me be in the game. But you know, everybody's got their own. But I feel like people are questioning him a lot for things that were just a decision. So like, what does that take coming from like Texas? I'm glad he stayed because I think it's a perfect scenario for him.
Yeah.
It seems like you're agreeing, so I'll let you go with it.
The funniest thing is like when people critique like the transfer portal NIL era, they're mad that people aren't doing the things that Arch Manning is doing, right?
Yeah.
Like Arch Manning is sitting behind an experienced quarterback in learning the game and waiting his turn, right? He's not doing a bunch of extra NIL stuff, right? The comment about focusing on football from the game, and people were like, that is the standard line when people ask him and his family about him doing NIL stuff. The only NIL deal he's done was a charity auction for a football card, right? They raised like a ridiculous amount of money for like a children's hospital, right? But outside of that, anytime somebody asks him about NIL, it's I'm focusing on football. I'm focusing on football. And so it's just funny to me as somebody who like watches it. And I talk to guys who know Texas recruiting and things like that. Like Arch has always moved different. He always like he wasn't going to camps because like he didn't want to be the sideshow. Like he didn't want to be the star. Like to talk to Arch and to get a story, you had to go to his school. You had to talk to his coach, like you had to 20 years ago recruit, right? 2003, right? These are all the things that people like piss and moan about that are like changing about college football. Arch is just doing those old school things, and people get weird about it, and it's there's 1,001 reasons why probably it's happening, but like people are gonna hate regardless, right? If he came out and he's
a Manning,
exactly right. If he came out and he was trying to be the star and be all that, people would crap on him. People are just finding things to be mad about. That's just like 2024. It's like people just finding things to complain about.
Yeah.
But like that's the thing that's always funny to me is like people want more young stars to act like Arch until they do it, and then they get pissy. And that's the annoying part.
Yep.
That's awesome. Well, again, we really do appreciate you joining us tonight and giving us the update on the Longhorns, the UT of the West, and
soon the entire SEC. Don't let me down.
Can you before we go? Could you just let everybody know like where to find you? Your Twitter, your everything like that.
Yeah, so you can follow if you're into like you're looking for Longhorn coverage. We're at Longhorn Pod again, still like 2017. I don't know how that was available, but we got it. So at Longhorn Pod on Twitter, Longhorn Republic wherever you find your podcast. So Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever. My personal Twitter is at GH Goodridge. I don't do as much sporty stuff there. I kind of talk about like nerdy stuff and sometimes like topical news, pop culture-y stuff, whatever. So I also make jokes about my kids a lot. So if you like making fun of your children, it might be your speed. I'm the kind of guy that's like, people that complain about their kids, it means that they're around their kids. Like that's my vibe on parenting. Like you can only complain if you're engaged. So like I make jokes about my kids, I make jokes about my wife because we're like, it's my favorite person. We have a lot of fun conversations. So that's my personal Twitter. So check that out as well. But yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was a blast.
Of course.
Awesome.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you, fellas.